Hello, class. Welcome back. Hope you guys had a really good spring break. Um, I believe that towards the end we ran into a lot of issues with the grading, and I've received tons and tons of email with your about your grades, and everything. It was most of you guys were okay, but some of you guys were had a hard time adjusting to this remote learning. And I had to make several exceptions because we did this in the middle of the school year or in the middle of the marking period. But from this point onwards, I want to set up a strict guidelines for you guys to follow, starting from the marking period 4. If you guys were in class, if we still had school in session, it would have been much easier for me to just give you guys the work after school, or made you guys just, hey, just come during lunch to wrap up some classwork slash tests or quizzes or something like that. But since we can't do that, a lot of you guys were sending me emails, and we did a lot of retakes and things like that to make up for it. So let me go over some policy changes in marking period 4, and I need you guys to stick by this. Unfortunately, no excuses are going to be accepted from this point onwards. I have seen some of you guys, not a lot of you guys. For this class, it was okay. Some of you guys were not turning in assignments at all, starting from the very first day we started the remote learning. And I'm sorry, but I just had to give you guys zeros for that. But if you guys did take a look at that and then suddenly just turn in the grades at the last day of the marking period, even though I had tons and tons of things to grade, I still gave you credit for it. I am not going to do that this marking period. If you do not turn in something to me, I am not going to grade it by that due date. So let me go over some policy changes for marking period 4. Make sure that the due date is kept. For any excuses regarding health and other personal issues, I need an email from your parents and the admins confirming it. You can't just tell me, Mr. Kim, I had this, I had that. I was sick, or I had to run some errands, or whatever it may be. I need a personal email from your parents or the admins confirming it. You can't just tell me that. Every late classwork from this point onwards will be a 0. So if you see a 0 in your classwork grade, do not ask me for a remake or retakes for the classwork, because the classwork is, like the word says, it's the classwork. It's basically whatever is done on that particular day. Whenever I ask you to assign something, most of the classwork or even the tests and quizzes, they will be done on a separate sheet of paper. And I know for a fact that some of you guys are collaborating with each other, hashtag collaborating or quotation mark collaborating. What that means is that you guys, I have seen so many answers being coincided with other students' work, okay? But I am not playing a FBI investigator here. I'm just going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say that you guys did it on your own. But if you guys did not have the courtesy to even turn in something to me, you guys are not getting any credit for it. Do not ask me after 7 days or even maybe a couple, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that, and ask me, oh, Mr. Kim, why did you give me a 0 for this? Can I make up for this? No. My answer is just going to be no. Or I'm not even going to respond to your email. Anything that's regarding a classwork from this point onwards, if my due date is at 6 p.m., 11:59 p.m., 3 p.m., or 4 p.m. actually, you guys have to finish it during that time. Like, it's the classwork. Like the word says, you guys need to be in the Google Classroom from, the regular the school period from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or even 2 p.m. and just finish it during that time. Guys, NJSLA is canceled. That's out of the question. So what that means is my work from this point onwards will be a lot less. It will be bits by bits. I'll give you guys max 5 questions a day to do. Even less than that. If you guys don't have the time to do that or can't really do it during that time, it was either because you were busy doing something else. I'm not taking any excuses for that. Algebra 1, NJSLA is still on. So some of your friends from your other class, 8th graders, will still have to take that. But our NJSLA is canceled. So there's no excuses as to why you can't do the work I'm giving you. The classwork will be very, very short. Quizzes and tests will be very, very short. Everything will be really short think of the last couple days with the marking period 3. That's how it's going to be from this point onwards. Okay? Every late test and quizzes will be a 50. That's because the grades will be targeted very, very harshly if I were to give you a 0 on the test. Quizzes, you know, there are 2 retakes. Tests, there are none. So if you, let's say I give you a test that's due at 11:59 p.m. and you don't do it and you turn it in the day before or something like that, then I'm sorry, I'm giving you a 50. Even if you get 100 on that, it's not 100, it's going to be a 50 from that point onwards. Now, some of you guys were saying about, oh, what if I were to turn it in on like, you know, if it was due at 11:59, but if I were to turn it into like 12:07 p.m., 12:07 a.m. I mean, that's fine. Like couple minutes, I'll give you for it. But then if you turn it to me like 2 a.m., oh, like you were too busy playing games or doing something like that until like 1 a.m. and started doing on like 1:30 a.m. and turn it to 2 a.m. I'm not accepting that. It's a 50. That's odd. That's a 50 if you get 100. If you get anything wrong, if you get anything less than that, that's because you got questions wrong. Do not send me an email. Please don't send me an email because I was flooded with emails like the last 5 days of the marketing period. I had hundreds and hundreds of email. I had to go through like if there were email boxes, I had to go from one, the most recent one, to like the seventh just to find out what email that you were talking about because of how emails I was getting flooded. So the best way is to not really send me as email as much as possible. Please stop flooding my emails with these things. Do not ask me for retakes of tests or classworks, only quizzes, and there are going to be 2 retakes from this point onwards. And you'll be able to retake up to 2 quizzes, and that'll be it. Okay? Don't give me any other excuses than that. Do not put all the latest assignments towards the end and submit it for partial credit like you have done the last marking period. Remember, classwork is 0 no matter what. Okay? If you have any questions, just make a comment on this video and so that I'll be able to know. Okay? So let's start with the do now. For today, what you guys are going to do for me is that you're going to be simply graphing what we call a f of x sine of x. You guys really don't have to do this portion. And then you guys will be really graphing what we call the cosine of x. So our main objective for today is to really graph sine of x and cosine of x and fill in these tables here and here. You guys have to be taking notes, and you guys have to take picture of the notes. And that is what I really want from you guys. I will upload these slides for you. You guys can take a look, or you guys, if you guys want to print this page out, feel free. Most likely, what I want you to do is draw this grid out and draw this table out and fill in the values. Okay. Okay, so if you guys are on your notebook or if you guys are on this page, print it out. Here's what I need you to do. For those of you guys who have this, have it on a separate sheet of paper, please draw this grid. The grid is going from every 2 tick marks, it's pi over 2. Then it's pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Then this is pi, negative pi over 2, negative pi, negative 3 pi over 2, and this negative 2 pi. Okay, and so please pause the video and make sure you have this grid marks here and also this table here. Okay, so assuming that you guys have these values here on the table, you guys can get it from the unit circle chart, which you guys should be able to see from here, okay? And we have always talked about how x was your cosine value and y was your cosine value, or we have done those 30, 45, 60, sine, cosine, tangent. You guys should have that chart somewhere in your notes. If you don't have it, I'm not going over it in this video. Take a look at my past videos and trying to locate where this is, okay? Now, sine of 0. Sine of 0 from the unit circle chart will be right here. We're looking at all the y values from the first quadrant, and that will be my values from here to here. Now, I understand that everything will be in radians, and quite frankly, when we're graphing trigonometric functions, because that's what we're going to be doing for the next 2 weeks, is that you guys will be dealing with most likely radians from this point onwards. So pi over 6, if you guys are still not comfortable with it, convert it into degrees, it will be 30, 45 degrees, 60, 90 degrees. I mean, if you guys want to write that in your notes, that's fine. But on the table, just for a reference guide, what is sine of 0? It should be 0 because if you go back to your unit circle chart, at the 0 radians, it was a 0 for the y value, which is your sine. Then it's 1/2 for pi over 6, right? For pi over 6, it was 1/2. So I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to write 1/2. So pi over 4, just go back to the unit circle chart here. You'll be root 2 over 2, root 3 over 2, and you guys get the idea. And for pi over 2, it was at 1. Okay, so how do I translate those values into this graph portion here? Okay, well, it really turns out that when you guys are graphing trigonometric functions, what's really important are these zeros and ones, okay, or negative ones, and we'll get to that. Well, so let me first put all the values here just so that we can wrap this up. So at pi, it was at 0. At 3 pi over 2 is at -1, and at 2 pi, which is same thing as saying 0, is 0 again. So I'm going to write 0, -1, and then 0. Remember, all of these values come from the unit circle. Okay, so what we're really going to take a look at is I need you to really, really focus on these values that either has 1, 0, or -1. We call these max, min, and I don't want to say line of symmetry, but we'll just call it the middle or the central. Doesn't matter how you call it. So why are we concerned with these three values is that these three values really tells us as to how to get the trigonometric graph pretty quickly. The sine graph, if you guys were to graph this on the decimals, in which I will also show you, is that it always starts from 0, 0. Okay, so you're going to put a point right here. I would like everybody to put a point right there on the graph. Then what happens is it goes at pi over, so there are a lot of these values in the middle, right? But as you can see, they're slowly increasing. This is like 0.5, this is like 7.7 something, and there's like 0. Maybe I have to do this on the calculator just a bit. Give me 1 second. Square root of 3 divided by 2. That gives you 0.86. So you can kind of slowly see how this is an exponential graph where the biggest jump comes from here, 0.5, and then it slowly starts to like saturate until it becomes a 1. But it becomes a 1 at pi over 2. So it will increase really rapidly and then slowly start to saturate like that. So what you're going to see is this kind of trend. And then from pi over 2 to pi, we're talking about this part right here. It's going to decrease from 1 to 0. And you know what happens is that it also decreases exponentially like this. Okay, so let's recap. From 0, 0, it goes to the max at pi over 2. Then it goes to the mid at pi. Then what happens is at 3 pi over 2 reaches the minimum of -1. And then it goes to middle at 2 pi at 0. So this right here, okay, well, let me just go back a little bit. How did you know that I'm going to connect the dots like this? Like where I go exponential like this and then exponentially like that. Well, you guys are not going to do this. You guys are not going to go zigzag like straight line, straight line, straight line. We're not going to do straight lines. Because every sine, cosine graphs, or even tangents, we're going to have these little curvature lines that tells us how these values in the middle goes exponentially. It's not a linear relationship, it's an exponential relationship. So the graph will look like this. It's like a little wave, right? It's like a little radio waves or one of those like, those like signals that we get. That's what sine and cosine graphs are really meant for. Those are really like radio signals and transmissions and things like that. Now, how do I do the opposite end? What do I do with the opposite end? Well, at negative pi over 2, well, that means that if you go back to the unit circle chart, negative pi over 2 is the same thing as saying starting from the 3 o'clock position and going down this clockwise direction, and it ends up being 3 pi over 2, right? So 3 pi over 2 is the same thing as saying negative pi over 2. Well, what happens? Your y value is -1. So if I go here, Negative pi over 2 is going to be ending up at negative 1. It kind of makes sense because if you continue this graph, it should look like that, right? Negative pi will be at middle, negative 3 pi over 2 would be at maximum, and negative 2 pi over 2, negative 2 pi would be at middle. So if you were to connect the dots once again, you guys will get like this kind of wave graph that you see here. This will be your sine graph, and here's what I need you to do also to check on your Desmos. I'm going to go to the Chrome, and then I'm going to type in literally just sine and then of x. Do you guys see this wave here? Okay, so you guys will see that it's a wave function. We're going to go to settings a little bit, and you guys can also do this on your graphing calculator. But the x-axis here, I'm going to make this to be 2 pi, and I'm going to also make this to be negative 2 pi. Y-axis, I'm going to make it as a 4 because that's what we had it as, and this will be negative 4. And add a label. No, we don't have to make a label actually. We're going to make a step to be every pi over 2. And step would be 1s, I believe. All right, so this is the graph. All right, so let me crop this picture out. Now, I hope that you guys can see how it was very similar to the one that we had before. Okay? Oh, I don't know if this is working. But if you guys take a look, I don't know why my pen is not working right now. But let's see if I go back here. Okay, so I'm running into a little bit of a technical issues with that. But what I need you to take a look at is how the sine graph matches what we have here versus the Desmos graph, which I had it for you guys right here. Notice how it goes to 0, 0. I know that if I had the pencil, I would like circle for you guys in the center. It goes through 0, 0, and what happens at pi over 2 is that it reaches 1. Then at pi it goes to 0. Then at 3 pi over 2 it goes to negative 1. Then at 2 pi it becomes 0. And then this thing repeats itself over and over again if I keep on going to the right. And the same trend happens at the left. At negative pi over 2 it reaches minimum. Negative pi reaches mid, and it goes on and on and on and like that. That is going to be the key part here in the graphing trigonometric functions. Now, what your task will be is to take a look at this slide, and what I need you to do is I need you to fill the table and draw the graph for the cosine between 2 pi and negative 2 pi. Remember, what's really important is that you take the maximum, middle, and the minimum. Please show me the graph for sine. I need you to have this on your notes. It's right here. I need you to copy and paste it, and I need you to have it somewhere. And also, your task will be to finish cosine graph on your own. Finish this by the end of today, and that's it. This one question. Like I said, we're gonna start really, really slow, bit by bit at a time. If you can't finish this by the end of today, then I'm sorry, it's going to be 0 for today's classwork. So make sure you get this done. Fill the table, draw the graph. Everything on a separate sheet of paper. You guys know the deal. All right, so thank you very much and have a good day. I'll see you guys tomorrow.